Are you
Well,
saying?
we're on, Matt. Welcome
Oh,
to
okay.
the Mix Minus podcast, I guess this is, or it's a video cast. I've Matt O'Daniels back here again.
How are you?
Good. We just did one last week before the tournament began, before March Madness and the NCAA tournament. And we did an audio podcast. I thought, let's jump on a Google Hangout. Let's use the power of technology and all that it avails to us. And we can just do this live because the Sweet 16 will already be tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, March 22nd. So we'll have our hot takes in person. Matt, what was the biggest group of surprises for you as we've whittled our way down to 16?
Um, I'll have to say I was impressed with USC. I didn't think that the Trojans, not the Gamecocks.
They would have played each other, right?
They actually would have. They would have. And I don't know. I was impressed with the Trojans run. Um, but I was also disappointed with Notre Dame. I thought I had Notre Dame going a little bit further, and I got burned with Florida State. I thought Florida State. I don't know. I think they're just athletic enough to get hot, even though they don't have a true point guard to make a Final Four run. And I don't know. A little surprised by Nova, but I'd say USC surprised me. Notre Dame underwhelmed. I was surprised how they went out early, took the early bow, and I don't know. I think you find this every year. We're all making picks. We all think we know what we're talking about, and most of us are wrong. And I don't know. Sweet 16's looking pretty good. What did you like about the opening rounds?
Well, the one point I would make with what you just said is you can still be an expert. A one and done is a totally different situation than a series. Most of the times in a series, the better team bears out. It tends to win. I mean, we saw last year in the NBA Finals, um, Golden State up 3-1 and to lose to the Cavs. But I think most of the time in the one and done aspect, teams get hot, and you don't know who the team who's going to get hot is. I mean, you bring up USC. I was really impressed with the way they played. We had a really good chance to see them without being bothered by a lot of other games in the Dayton play in or play off, or I guess it's considered the actual tournament at this point.
The first
And
four.
the first four, and they were really impressive. And then for them to come through and beat SMU, who's a really
Down,
impressive team on
down,
their own accord, they were
yeah,
feisty. USC
down
was
seven.
like, as a fan, I think you have to feel really good about how feisty that team was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the one good thing Pat Hayden did in his tenure at USC was to hire Andy Enfield. But those guys, they're like they're like he gets athletic players. He believes in them. They shoot threes all over the place. They beat UCLA earlier this year, but to be down 17 to SMU and then come back and win that game, and then I mean Baylor pound for pound is bigger than SC, but SC at their skill positions, I think they're a little bit more basketball bred. They're more smooth. Whereas Baylor, you're going to get the athletes, but they just don't seem as I don't know. They don't seem as refined, I guess. But yeah, Trojans going forward, they're going to get some players, and they just I like the way they play. But that's the problem. Sometimes their best defense is their 3-point shooting, and if they're not making their outside shots, that can that can kind of bode bad for the Trojans.
And poor Northwestern.
Oh, I mean, what that's unfortunately I wasn't able to watch the game live, but I was getting text messages. Um, I can't believe they didn't call the goaltending. I mean, and then Collins unfortunately gets the technical foul. Uh, just that was a strange. Did you see that? I mean, that was the strangest thing. How do you not call a goaltend? The guy went through the hoop. That was just bizarre.
That was a very tough call. I mean, you see a lot of these, and I mean, what that would have broken it to three, I believe. So it wasn't quite
Yeah.
something that put them over the top or held
No,
them
but it was
back.
in the middle of a momentum run, according to my brother. And yeah, just how do you? that's one of those calls where that's just indisputable. You went through the rim. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But then getting back to the Trojans, when they did play Baylor, uh, towards the end of the game, Baylor, the Baylor player, it wasn't Motley, it was the other guy. I forgot his name, but he clearly fouled McLaughlin. No foul was called. Ball goes off of McLaughlin, and the ref calls it USC ball. It was like a makeup call within a play, but yet the Baylor guy was complaining that wait, it was off USC's. Well, wait, he was supposed to call a foul on you, but it was interesting in that scenario where the ball clearly went off USC, but they didn't reverse it.
I kind of like that player on Baylor, Manu Lecomte. I didn't realize, I didn't really know much about him, and
Neither
he
did his
seemed to have
Trojans.
some momentum plays, and he came from Miami, from what I saw.
Yeah, and yeah, the Trojans clearly didn't pay attention to him as he went on a run, scored all those points at the end while Motley was on the bench nursing those four fouls. Drew went with the small lineup, and the Bears prevailed. They're a strange team. That's another team that could possibly go to the national title game when you think about it, because if you're going to have Villanova lose, Wisconsin's just that whole program, like they're a basketball school.
And they're old. I mean, the players are really, they're veteran, which can keep you calm and collected, and you can all of a sudden do really well against maybe kids who are a little younger who haven't played against each other for
And
very long. Now, Villanova, of course, is a very high level of that same kind of team. So I think what you've seen from a lot of people is the fact that maybe Wisconsin should not have been that low of a seed. Although I kind of have a problem when people say, well, it was unfair. It's like at some point you got to play the teams. I'm sick
right,
of hearing like, oh, our bracket was so tough and this. It's like, just play the teams you have and beat them, or don't.
right.
This whole idea of, well, it's so unfair, we couldn't wait to see them till later. Like you hear this in any sport where you look at a playoff bracket and it's like, oh, they're going to have to see them in the second round as opposed to the third. It's like, who cares? If you're going to lose to them or beat them when you play them.
hmm And I don't know, just a tough break for Northwestern. But that's what's so exciting about this one and done thing or the tournament is that you just never know. Oregon was on the ropes a little bit at the end of the game towards Rhode Island. I mean, Rhode Island, I thought towards the end of their game against the Ducks, they just they deer in the headlight type of situation, bad shot selection. Oregon went ahead and made big shots when they had to. Did you watch the Duke South Carolina game?
I did. I was really impressed with South Carolina. They really outplayed Duke. I kind of got the feeling Duke thought they would just win with the force of their players, and they would win with, who's the top 100, who are the top 10 players. They were looking to win with their recruitment class, and USC was looking to win on the court, and they really took it to them. I mean, that was every time you thought Duke would have something coming back, they were just South Carolina was just relentless. I mean, athletic, relentless, and just I couldn't be more impressed.
Yeah, and I've got so many takes on this game because that was the first game I mean, I was looking forward to it. Living here in South Carolina, the game those slate of games being played in Greenville, which is a nice city or a nice town, and so I had Duke friends that were at the game, and I had South Carolina friends that were at the game. I also had North Carolina Tar Heel fans that were at the game. So I'm getting texts left and right from all these alumni, and so that was cool. But South Carolina I think they went 7 of 32 from the field in the first half, and they still kept it close. And I'm thinking, all right, well, and I was watching the game with my buddy Joe, and I'm like, well, Duke's going to turn it on. Duke is still Duke. But Carolina clearly had the home court advantage in that North Carolina Tar Heel fans were rooting for the Gamecocks, and it was just so funny. So basically that arena might have been 70-30 in favor of the Gamecocks. And then the second half starts. Duke kept on turning the ball over. I mean, it was just really strange. I mean, they were countering a lot, and they certainly were hitting big shots. But then once Carolina started they started that momentum around after the 8 minute timeout, and just impressive. Like you said, not a lot. They do have the SEC Player of the Year, but nobody too flashy. I mean, uh, Frank Martin's been there 4 years. I went down there to Columbia 4 years ago and saw them lose to number one Florida. And Frank Martin said in that press conference 4 years ago, "This is what we're going to be doing." So he had a vision of what he wanted to do. The I know the athletic department supports him, and it's a mutual thing that they're trying to accomplish. But also interesting, Coach K didn't complain about the refs because there were some like that Kennard fifth foul. I don't know, but Coach K in the post game said we have to get deeper and we have to get more physical. You can't go 6 and 7. And then when you look at like the past 10 years, the last one and done guy to go from UNC was Marvin Williams. Duke has become that professional school. You know what I mean? In the last 10 years, if you're one and done, you're not going to Carolina. You're going to Duke. But you don't think about that, or I don't think about that because it's Coach K, it's Duke, it's a proper college, an established university scholarly place, and the Duke is its own trademark. It's the it's Notre Dame has that for football. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting how Coach K always loves coaching his teams, but he was very adamant about we have to get more physical and we have to get deeper because, man, you're right. South Carolina, they don't have the McDonald's all Americans, but they were just hustling, and I mean, it was ugly at times too, but it was exciting.
Yeah, in some ways, Duke has almost become in the NBA the teams that are the ring chasers. So they're able to get players because they have a base of other players, and then it's people going for a championship. Um, the other interesting thing is it almost reminds me, playing to that ring chaser ideal, it almost reminds me of the 2004 NBA championship where it was the Lakers and they had loaded up. They had loaded up with all the players. Karl Malone had come, Gary Payton to play alongside Shaq and Kobe, and then Detroit just rolled into that series, and all the pundits were saying they have no shot. They're not going to be able to play this. And I know there were some injuries. I know Mailman got hurt, but Detroit just took that series. I mean, the Lakers only got the second game, and that was in overtime, and that was on like a great Kobe shot. Sometimes the group of players can just they can upend storylines. I mean, that's the beauty of sports. And I'm always interested with a team like South Carolina. We say they don't have really the top recruits, the top players, but it will be kind of neat to see in 5 years, are there an assemblage of any of these players who do make it to the pros somehow? Because maybe they were the underlooked star, or they did have the potential that could make them a workmanlike player in the NBA. I always like to see that. And then, there's a team where maybe you look back and you go, oh my gosh, look at all the players
Right.
who actually made it. And then it starts to kind of dawn on you, oh, okay. Like you almost need time though to tell you that it was justified that they beat a Duke like that. But it was very interesting. But why don't we move into the games themselves, because we can talk back on some of these other games off of these games. First up, we're going to go in order that the games will be played, starting with tomorrow, which is March 23rd. First up is going to be Michigan against Oregon. Michigan is obviously on quite a run right now, and Oregon has done what they needed to do to get to this point. I still like Dylan Brooks a lot. I hadn't realized this guy Dorsey, he was really good in the last game as well. I think it's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, and I think the Mojos with Michigan. I mean, Oregon's got the athleticism, but there's more. I think maybe when I saw Oregon kind of struggle against Rhode Island, that to me, maybe I don't know. I think Michigan is more united right now. Over the last 2 weeks, I think they're a better coached team than Oregon. So I kind of like that at if it came down to a last possession type situation. But yeah, it'll be fun.
Then next up, again, these are going to be overlapping games as we tend to see when there's a lot of these games going on in the tournament. Next up, we have West Virginia playing Gonzaga. West Virginia has also been a very
Well, they go 12 deep. They go Huggins plays everybody.
But the fact obviously they beat Bucknell, but then they took out Notre Dame kind of easily. I mean, they were
Well,
really in control of that game.
and Notre Dame probably could have been or should have been picked off by Princeton on Thursday on the first game of the tournament. But yeah, strange. I thought Notre Dame would have played better. But when you have West Virginia playing against Gonzaga, I mean, Gonzaga is going to get tested. They have, I mean, not to say they weren't tested with Northwestern, but this isn't Northwestern. This is West Virginia. This is Huggins, and I get it. Gonzaga, they have a tradition as well of playing, in postseason. But I don't think they've seen a team like West Virginia. I don't think any team sees a team like West Virginia that just constantly presses, and they're rotating players, and they're just in your face.
It's going to be very tough. I had not realized on Gonzaga that Nigel Williams-Goss, I didn't realize he played a couple of years at Washington. It's interesting how much transfers have played kind of a part in this tournament.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's and now with that fifth year, Caton Reinhardt from Marquette, for example, played with UNLV in 2013, played for USC last year, is now a grad student at Marquette, played with them this year. So he was one of three players to play. He was one of two players to play for three different teams during his college career in the NCAA tournament, which is bizarre. The other player, his name escapes me, but that was in just recently. But yeah, transfers are huge, especially with that fifth year, and you can use that eligibility. Why not? Play at another school and try to win the title.
And you can sometimes be 5 years older than the young gun team. And that makes a huge difference when you're talking about an 18-year-old to a 23-year-old. You're like a 36-year-old NBA player when you're 23 in college basketball.
A lot of that experience, that life experience, yeah, it's a that life experience. It's you can't make stats on it. You can't really define it, but sometimes it's a big factor in the locker room, obviously on the court as well.
Next up, 9:39 p.m. Eastern, we have Purdue, number 9, playing Kansas. I have to tell you, I did not watch a ton of Kansas this year. All I heard was how good Josh Jackson was and all this, and I'm sort of dubious on that because we've heard a lot of these players from Kansas who don't quite live up to the potential, which is a tough potential when you're a top player. But I really watched him in the game on was it? I think it was Sunday. Um, he was he impressed me so much that I'm like on the Josh Jackson bandwagon now. His game is so smooth. He almost is retro, but yet has the athleticism of a modern day player. I don't I don't see Purdue having much of any chance, and Kansas City's a 5 point favorite, which might hit that home.
I had Purdue going in the Final Four, but I mean, I have it right here, but that's only because I wanted to. There's going to be an upset eventually, you think, but I don't know. Kansas looks really good, and I can't argue with anything you said. Um, uh, Perry Ellis isn't there this year, finally, but yeah, I'm. And Bill Self's a great coach. He gets these kids. They never lose at home anyway, and I don't know. Now with Nova out, Duke out, this could be nice for Kansas. It really could.
Yeah, and they're so deep. I mean, and their best college players aren't even Josh Jackson. So I just was so impressed. He pops out of the court when he's playing, and he has like this. When he dribbles the ball up the court, he almost has like a galloping, like he's on a horse, dribbling up the court, and he just gets to the hoop. He's smooth, really good shooter. I totally see, and it's very justified why he is a top five, potentially like a third or fourth pick
Yeah,
in
and I
the
don't, and I
in the
and I
NBA
think
draft.
and I think it shouldn't be misconstrued as like flashy or anything because I think it's like a controlled. He's just a smooth player. He knows what is going on. He's got savvy. So sometimes people can misinterpret that as being cocky or he's being a showman. But I think he's got a high basketball IQ, and sky's the limit for that kid.
Next up, we got Xavier playing Arizona. Arizona should win, but Xavier's been on quite a run here. I think impressing people and surprising some people.
Yeah, and my without they shouldn't have made it this far. All the doubters. Why did Xavier even get invited to the tournament? Well, now they're in the Sweet 16, and this is where I think the run ends. Sean Miller, you have to think is going to get to a Final Four eventually, and I think this is the path that'll take will take Sean Miller to the Final Four, and they're loaded. I just think this matchup, I think Arizona they take care of Xavier handily.
Now we move to Friday. It's crazy when the games drop down. Even a Sweet 16 is still only 8 games. So we knocked out 4 on Thursday. We have 4 on Friday, starting with Butler against North Carolina. I've not seen a lot of North Carolina in this tournament. I feel like every time you go to watch, they're up or they've already won. But North Carolina is nearly an 8-point favorite, which is insane in the NCAA tournament.
And that's tempting if you're going to be, having fun around the water cooler or making a friendly wager. That's a lot of points for. I think Butler is extremely well coached. I think Butler players. I don't want to say the Butler way. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not involved with Butler basketball in any way, but I think they're very fundamentally sound. Whereas for what they lack in athletic ability, they just make up in smart basketball prowess. They're just a solid team. But North Carolina, I guess they were. I didn't see the game, but I guess they were down to Arkansas, and then they just went on this 12-0 run to close out the game against Arkansas in the second round. Now that Villanova's lost, maybe UNC. I don't know. North Carolina is just good. They speak for themselves. I don't know. That's a lot of points. I think Butler probably covers, but North Carolina wins.
And an over-under of 153. That's a lot of points for a college basketball game.
Another interesting point, getting back to the Trojans of USC. They scored a basket at the buzzer, and the line was 5.5. So it was 82-76. They throw in a buzzer beater to make it 82-78. So, the line was 5.5. USC covers. It's just, if you're into that, portion of the action, it makes it very interesting. And but like I said, I think UNC wins. But that's a lot of points, I think.
It is a lot of points. Next up, which is probably the game in this grouping that most will be watching, South Carolina will play Baylor in Madison Square Garden. I know a lot of people are a little bummered by the fact that we will not be seeing Duke and Villanova making it to the Garden, which is sort of a second home type of deal for those types of teams. How many people from Columbia are going to be traveling to MSG and Baylor as well? What are you thinking?
You know what? I had a friend of mine who's a South Carolina fan go, I think it's time. I can pull up the text. I think it's time that we're going to be considered a basketball school. Let's pump the brakes. Are you guys even a football school? I mean, you are, but this idea that South Carolina has arrived, I mean, you need to, back that up with multiple tournament runs or multiple appearances for that matter. So I mean, I don't know how many people will be traveling because when I think of South Carolina, I think football before basketball. I think the committee's probably really, well, they won't outwardly say it, but they're got to be a little upset that Nova and Duke, because they're going to be driving a lot of activity up in Manhattan, and I think the attendance will be, or the electricity certainly will be at a lesser wattage than had Nova and Duke, gotten up there.
Next up is like the game of the year. It could be the final in many brackets if things played out a little differently. This is the game, a Friday night, 9:40 Eastern, UCLA, Kentucky, in Memphis, over under at 165.5. This is going to be an NBA game filled with NBA players up and down the floor. This is what the tournament for me is all about.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to be. I mean, you always talk about those guys that are prepping, ready to make that next step. to the NBA, to the association, and this is going to be a fantastic game. Um, a little home cooking, or a little Calipari will be coming back to his one of his former homes.
Yeah.
UCLA.
There are no banners in the rafters
That's
though.
ridiculous. And how ridiculous is that? But uh, anyway, they made their free throws. They would have beaten Kansas. But um, what did you think of Ball? Like, what did you think of UCLA to this point? I know you were very interested in the Bruins.
I love Ball. I could watch him play for. I would almost love him to just stay in college to watch him play college basketball. I'm gonna watch wherever he goes. I'm really hoping he goes to the Lakers when he goes to the NBA so that I could watch the Lakers again on League Pass and hear their. I love watching LA stuff on the services where you can see the out of town games. I couldn't be any more impressed with him. I think he's so precocious. He's so poised. Let's get all our P's out there. He was just like, I turned that game on and it was a little close.
Very close. That close
It was a little
in the
close,
beginning.
but he just sort of took the game over at a point, and I forget when it was. Was it maybe at the start of the second half? And he accounted for some ridiculous amount of other points. And he's almost the thing I love with Ball. With Jason Kidd, he literally couldn't really shoot. So he was a pass first point guard, but it wasn't like Steve Nash, where you have the threat of him hitting a three. And he would, Steve Nash would always want to pass, and he would wait till like the very last second or like the third, fourth pass coming around for him to shoot. Ball is like the same way. He always wants to pass. He always wants to be unselfish. I thought it was funny. I heard one podcast where a guy said he's made Bryce Alford fun. Um, and, it's
Wow, that's really
amazing
true. I
where
can't think,
then,
but yeah, that's funny.
though, he'll just come up and be like, okay, I'm not going to pass now. I'm just going to hit a three. Like he knows he can always hit a three, but the thing I love about his game is he just wants to be an unselfish basketball player. So that to me is phenomenal. I really enjoy watching him play. We've seen him already go into Kentucky and win this year.
Yeah.
This game is what it's all about. I mean, first of all, Friday nights, you just love being home. You're done with your week, most of us.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a late start, but there's
But you're
no
gonna watch
worry.
it.
There's no
You're
worry
gonna
in the
watch
world.
the game.
Yeah, there's no worry in the world. You got a beer. You're watching this game. This is what it's all about. I don't think there's any chance there's a blowout to one side or the other. But the fact it's almost 170 combined points as an over/under, this beast is going like 92 to 89, or this is going to be an amazing basketball game. The atmosphere is going to be fantastic. I feel like Dickie V here. It is. You're going to feel something in this game. And it's actually funny. A little side note. Yesterday, I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw that the Brooklyn Nets had shared something where the Long Island Nets, this joke of a D-League team, was playing in Brooklyn against the Utah Jazz's D-League team. There was no one in the stands. It was a noontime game. I don't even know why this was on any video service. And it was like, here's RJ Hunter leading the way. And I'm like, wow, this is what the beauty of college basketball is.
Georgia State.
RJ Hunter goes from upsetting the world, his dad falling and breaking his leg in whatever. He goes from upsetting the world in front of a packed house, whatever the Nielsen rating is, however many people are watching, to one exact year later. Or was it two? It was last year, right? With the RJ Hunter? I forget. But however it cuts, you know what I mean? To 1 or 2 years later on the same date, playing in an empty Brooklyn arena as the D-League Long Island Nets. I mean, that's what you see. And the atmosphere in this game is just, it's everything. We got springs here. It's getting warm. We know we're on the cusp of the Final Four. We're in the Sweet 16. The Masters are coming. Baseball's coming. This is when like your being starts to raise up. This is where everything changes. This is where all the seasonal affective disorder is gone because you have no choice but to be optimistic and and enthusiastic about everything. So I think that is the beauty of this game. 9:40 Friday night, UCLA, Lonzo Ball playing Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox. What's the kid, the big man down low in Kentucky, who's he's actually projected in many draft mock drafts to go to the Brooklyn Nets. So I think it bears watching. It's Adebayo, right?
Yeah.
So you are just looking. The interesting thing is Kentucky has like 3 or 4 draftable players, and I think 3 will be in the first round. I mean, this is really, really good. And UCLA, they do they have Ball, who's going to be,
I have
I'd say,
Lee.
the number 2 pick. But yeah, I mean, this right here. Watch this game as if it's the final for this game. Don't worry about what anything else means. Just watch this game for everything
And
on the line to get to the Elite Eight. But imagine it's the championship.
there's so many, like you said, um, great great matchup. Blue blood versus blue blood, tradition versus tradition. A rematch of a earlier game this year. A lot of everything. I'm sure that these kids who were playing in AAU all over the place, in high school. I mean, this is what they want. Friday night, like you said, 9:40. All eyes on them, and UCLA, Kentucky. I mean, it doesn't that for a regional semi, and man, I don't even know. I'm gonna I'm gonna root for Kentucky because I think uh, they're gonna have the home court advantage in the crowd. I don't know. I like Calipari over Alfred here because Alfred's on his way out, right?
I don't know with all the balls coming. I don't know how
Oh,
he could
and
be on his way. I don't know if he could be on his way out, but I wouldn't worry about the coaching. It's really Calipari against Ball. Um,
I'm gonna go. What's the line? What was? It's
the line
gotta be
is
close. I don't even
it's
know.
so here's the thing. It's even. It's even
Oh yeah,
and
it is.
165.5 over under.
It'll change, but I mean, it won't change that much. But yeah, it could go anywhere. I don't know. I like Kentucky in this game. Um, I don't know. I don't know why.
Interesting, interesting point on this little ticket thing. I think it's Vivid Seats that they have on the ESPN. It says
Mhm.
899 tickets available from $90 for this game. And then for the next game, which is in New York, Wisconsin, and Florida, 483 available for $281. So that's kind of weird. I would almost fly to Memphis just to go see the game and save the money on airfare.
I mean, yeah, I mean, what a underwhelming draw for the Garden. I mean, there some of those programs are going to travel, but not having Nova and Duke up there has to be upsetting. But
That's better money. It's weird. I mean, I guess it's just
that's
I
very
guess
strange. I would never. That's really strange. That's a good point.
you know what my real fun thing with the tournament is when you're watching the games and you're trying to look around the court if you don't know where it is to figure out where it is, and how much the
Yeah,
NCAA changes over these courts where they don't even look like the home court of that NBA team anymore. That's always kind of a fun thing to look at.
absolutely. They kind of made those courts uniform, whereas growing up, it was the Spectrum or Continental, Brendan Byrne, and yeah, I kind of like that. You a little bit originality. Like they were playing up in Boise, so you have the orange and blue. Uh, so they've gone to that uniform court system, but they do have the logo in the top right, and then the conference logo on the other side. But yeah, playing in Dayton, it's they've gone to that universal uh, stock floor, which yeah, I don't know. I kind of liked it, like you mentioned, when it was kind of just unorganized, and they just got to the arena and they just put on lines, and here we are. Uh, Game that I think of all the time is the '92 regional final Duke Kentucky, because that was at the Spectrum and the floor just kind of looked crazy with the different the different 3-point lines and the lanes, and I don't know.
Last game, Florida's a 2-point favorite. As we said about the tickets, this is the last game. Florida's a 2-point favorite over Wisconsin. Wisconsin just feels like a party crasher all the time, the buzzkill, and I could see them just grinding out to a win. I think it's 131 is the over under, so that's a low scoring game. Um, Florida's gotten to a Sweet 16. They're sort of back in play again.
Have you seen Canyon Barry shoot free throws.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's
Underhand. Yeah.
unbelievable. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and he's a great free throw shooter. There's one of those transfers, Matt.
That's
Uh,
right. That's
Transferred
exactly
from
right.
college of Charleston over to Florida. They're making a deep run now, and uh, I didn't have Florida this far. I had Florida State further. Go figure. I don't know. To your point about the party crashing, I like Wisconsin. I think that culture of Wisconsin basketball, there's got to be something said about it. And I think they beat Florida in the regional semi up at the Garden.
Well, cool. I think we've hit all the games here, and maybe we'll do another Google Hangout in a week or so when we look on to the Final Four.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Alrighty, we'll talk soon.